All right, let's talk about something that feels, well, incredibly common these days. That deep, nagging exhaustion that just won't go away. So often, we tell ourselves we're just being lazy. But what if it's something more? We're going to break down the huge difference between burnout and laziness so you can really understand what might be going on.
Does this feel familiar? You find yourself just lying down a lot. Not because it's a choice, but because it feels like you physically can't do anything else. It's so easy to beat yourself up over that, right? But let's take a closer look at what's really happening here.
And this is where things get really confusing. We tend to mistake burnout, which is a temporary state of total exhaustion, for laziness, which we think of as, a permanent part of someone's personality. They can look so similar on the surface, but telling them apart is absolutely crucial.
So, what even is burnout officially? Look, it's not just about being tired after a long week. The key words here are excessive stress. It's a state of complete exhaustion that hits you on every single level, emotionally, physically, and mentally, all because you've been pushed way past your ability to cope.
Now, if you're feeling any of this, I want you to know you are so far from being alone. In fact, you're in the vast majority. Just look at this number. It's staggering, and it shows you just how big of a deal this really is.
That's right. A whopping 3/4 of adults in the U.S. have felt the symptoms of burnout. And when you think about our culture, that always-on, 24/7 grind, it kind of makes sense, doesn't it? This isn't some personal failing. It's a massive shared experience.
Okay, so let's get right to the heart of it. This is maybe the most important difference to understand. Burnout is a state you are in. It is not the person you are.
And what's really key here is the element of time. Laziness, if we're calling it a character trait, is pretty stable. That person just generally doesn't feel like putting in a ton of effort. But with burnout, there is always a before. You used to be motivated, maybe you were a super high achiever, and this exhaustion is a major, noticeable shift.
So, beyond just feeling bone-tired, what's actually going on inside your head when you're burnt out? Let's dive into the signs, starting with this really profound feeling of being disconnected.
There's actually a clinical term for this, depersonalization. It's that strange, unsettling feeling that you're just going through the motions, almost like you're on autopilot. You feel detached from your work, your friends, and even from yourself.
And this quote just nails that feeling, doesn't it? It's like an emotional numbness, this deep sense of emptiness. You're not really engaged, you feel kind of helpless, and you just don't feel like yourself anymore. It's a really strange and scary place to be.
Okay, another huge clue is a sudden shift in your emotions. Do you find yourself getting really snappy with people? Are little things that never used to bother you suddenly driving you up the wall? Does it feel like your emotions are just all over the place? Well, that could be burnout talking.
I mean, look at the difference here. It's night and day. Someone who's burnt out is often in a state of emotional chaos. But laziness? That's usually linked with being really relaxed, pretty laid back, and generally not bothered. Emotionally, they are polar opposites.
Now, these intense internal feelings, they don't just stay inside. They start to bubble up to the surface and affect how we act, especially when it comes to the things we used to love doing.
Oh man, this one is a biggie. Burnout has this incredible ability to just suck the joy out of everything. Those hobbies, activities, even the job that used to light you up and give you energy, now they just feel like another heavy chore. You might even start to feel resentful toward them.
And this can pop up literally anywhere in your life. Maybe your performance at work or school starts to slide. Maybe you stop playing that sport you lived for, or that instrument you practiced every day is just gathering dust. The passion is just gone, replaced by total exhaustion.
And perhaps one of the most visible signs to the people around you is when you just stop taking care of yourself. When you are that drained physically and emotionally, even the simplest things, like taking a shower, can feel like climbing a mountain.
So the real key is to notice these shifts in your routine. Are you sleeping way too much or barely at all? Have you kind of stopped caring about how you look? Are you dodging calls from friends and family? If even simple tasks wipe you out, that's not laziness. It's a giant flashing sign that your battery is at zero. Now, this feeling of complete depletion, it doesn't happen overnight. You don't just wake up one day totally burnt out. It's so important to realize that it's a gradual process, a slow burn that happens in stages.
It often kicks off with a honeymoon phase, where you're super engaged and loving the challenge. But then, stress starts to creep in. If that stress never lets up and becomes chronic, Well, that's what leads to full-on burnout. And the final stage is habitual burnout, where this feeling of exhaustion just becomes your new normal.
And this right here, this is why catching it early is so incredibly important. By the time you get to that habitual stage, the constant mental and physical fatigue makes you so much more vulnerable to really serious conditions, like depression and anxiety.
So, after going through all these signs and stages, what's the big takeaway here? It's actually pretty simple. Just recognizing what's happening to you is the first and honestly the most powerful step you can take.
This is exactly why we need to talk more about this. When we dismiss these signs as just laziness, we're basically preventing ourselves and others from getting the help they desperately need. But calling it what it is, burnout, that opens the door to actually recovering and healing.
So, if this all felt a little too familiar, if you saw yourself in these signs, please take it seriously. Reaching out to a mental health professional is not a sign of weakness. It's a huge sign of strength. It's the first step to feeling like yourself again.
I'll just leave you with this final thought to chew on. What would happen if we all changed how we look at this kind of profound exhaustion? What if, instead of judging it as a character flaw, we learn to see it for what it really is, a cry for help from a mind and body that have simply been pushed too far for too long?